Good evening and welcome to tonight's school board meeting this Monday, September 19th, 2016. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For any students watching, midterms aren't next week. It's really September. So item number 2 is public participation. If you do come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, we will close public participation and we will go on to item number 3 with our guests, which is polling site outcome on September, my goodness, I keep doing that tonight, September 13th, 2016. I invite to the table Lynn Christensen and Police Chief Mark Doyle. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
So how did it go? We had our primary last
week. With only 3,700 voters, it was a piece of cake.
Excellent.
Now ask me about it after November.
And we definitely will do that.
Good.
So I will start by, unless you have a synopsis of what you want to talk about as far as the happenings of that day, and we can open it up to the board for any questions that you may have.
I was summoned, so I'm here at your
bet.
disposal.
No problem at all.
Just one thing real
Sure.
quick. The plan that we put in place that we work collectively with Lynn and her staff, town clerk's office, the school board, the town council, seemed to work very well up there at the school. Now, as Lynn had already stated, with just the minimum number of folks that came out to vote, it worked very well, even though school was in session. And there were some accommodations that were made for faculty and staff, which were very helpful. And my hat off to the folks who actually pulled it together at the last minute to make sure that the staff had an opportunity to get from the lower lot up to the school. It worked out great. Understandably, because of... Sorry, I just heard...
He got a signal from back.
And understandably that the turnout we expect to be...
They're both on.
Okay. I'm getting this. I'm like,
false alarm.
We just want to make sure folks don't, I don't want to say get lulled into a sense of, wow, this was easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's not going to be that way in November. It's not going to be that way at the middle school. It's not going to be that way at the upper elementary school. It's not going to be that way at St. John. There's going to be a huge turnout. We expect it. People should understand that they should do what they need to do in terms of their due diligence to vote. If they can accommodate voting at the less than rush hour times, that would be a huge help. Find ways to carpool to get to the polls, all of the things that we've heard about in the past. But I think with what we've got, having run through it like we have just last week, it worked out very well.
And the plan appears to have the potential for working out well in November, particularly where we won't have students and buses and parents at either of the schools.
unless they're voting, which is great.
Then they're not parents, then they're voters.
Yes, they are. Andy, do you have a question, comment?
A little of both, actually.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, I wasn't there, so it's the first vote I've missed in who knows how long, getting called on a business trip the night before. So, one of the questions I had is when we were looking at the middle school, you were talking about the limited single door to go in and out, but didn't think it would be a big issue with the lower volume of voting like you had.
And it is not.
And right. So the question I have is, when we hit November, when we know there'll be a few more people coming, are you going to take advantage of the alternate exit to make the flow better?
Adam and I are talking.
Okay. Because I know there was some question at the table as to whether you would use it, try to stick the same way, or what.
I don't believe we can do it the same way. I don't believe there's any way we can put the people that I would anticipate coming through the polls in and out that same door. So I'm working with Adam to see what kind of accommodations we can make. It's helpful that there are no students in school, and so some of the alternatives are there that would not be there when the students are there, but we're working on it.
And the other question I had is not having seen the traffic the way you're going to route it around, what sort of officers will you have to not only help with the flow, but also helping people cross the traffic when they go?
We actually had, we were just talking about this, we had 7 officers up there, and it almost seemed like it was overkill, but we understood that going in. We wanted to make sure that we had the people and the resources on site available to move traffic, expedite traffic, provide for the safety of the folks that may be crossing through the lot and whatnot. And understandably, there's going to be a period of time where it's going to be dark and the lighting up there isn't conducive necessarily to having a whole lot of foot traffic. So we will have quite a presence out there for folks, depending upon which way we decide, to make sure that either the folks are going to go out one way or the other from the back end of the APR room, as opposed to trying to squeeze back through that one choke point at the door. There'll be plenty of officers there to accommodate not only traffic, but folks getting back out into the parking lot from the school.
And the other advantage to having the number of officers we had there this time was training people. You know, there was a new traffic flow. The fact that we had as many there as we could, they could watch almost every intersection as well as in the parking lot and say, no, 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 don't turn there, you need to go this way. So those people that have come through have been trained on how the traffic flow will work.
Are there any other questions of the board or comments from the board? Michael?
Thank you. I know that my children took the bus that day. I wasn't sure if there was a good turnout of individuals that actually took the bus instead of drop off.
There were definitely more that took the bus because the administration asked if parents would consider that, because it would just make for an easier way of doing things, and parents were very good about that.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody that did send their child on the bus. I'm sure it helped. And thank you for everything you guys did.
And I think on the administration side, I did go to 8th grade parent night because I have an 8th grader, and there was 7th grade parent night the night before, and that was reiterated to parents about, you know, putting the kids on the bus specifically for that voting day, unless they were coming to vote at that time. So, you know, just to minimize traffic, and it seemed to have helped. So that's excellent. And you know, this is going to be, we're right now we're looking at November. Always look at the next game when you're going toward the playoffs, but we know that April will. Those events will likely have school in session as well. So the more we condition that environment, I think the better and more smoothly it'll go. So, and with upper elementary being, you know, middle school being 5, 6, 7, 8, the more we condition that culture from our parents, I think it'll help you as well. So I'm sure we will continue to do it on our end because it makes sense for everybody. And I didn't hear anything from administration, but did you?
No, well, I want to give Matt a chance in a minute because he was really the one that went to the two sites. But I wanted to certainly start by thanking Lynn and Chief Doyle, because really we did do a lot of pre-planning, and the Department of Public Works, because really toward the end we thought it was wise to line in some way Bishop Field so that people would know better how to park in that area. We needed to try and get 80 some cars in that area, and I think that striping helped a great deal on that day, or it would have been more chaotic. And I really want to say too, for both staffs, they were very good. We have to remember this was a 6th day of school, so students were just becoming acclimated to school in and of itself, and the 7th graders were new to it, and the 5th graders were new to it. So really, when you look at that, I think everyone did his or her best job. Matt, do you want to weigh?
Yeah, I just think the planning and the execution that went into this was very helpful. The support from Chief Doyle and all the staff that he had there, all the officers, I think it was the right amount of officers to have to provide the training. And when you have a police officer giving you direction as to what to do, it holds a lot more weight than a regular administrator in a tie or something. And they were very good with their instructions and very precise. They knew how to deliver the message, and it was perfect. Even to the point of having an officer stationed in the parking lot in Bishop Field to guide the teachers into the parking spaces, because we had asked them, it was the police department's idea, to have everybody back into their parking spaces. So at the end of the day, there wouldn't be people trying to back out of parking spaces all at once, causing another kind of an issue. So they were there helping the teachers back into the parking spaces, which was known a couple of days in advance. The staff was given that notification. And probably I had heard from talking to a few that that 80% of them expressed some trepidation with having to back into a parking spot, because it's not something normally that one does. Usually just pull right in. And I think those with the backup cameras were at a distinct advantage as opposed to the others. But from what I saw, and when I got there, we had the shuttle buses provided by Caring Hands. They provided shuttle buses from that parking lot to the middle school, and from the Legion to the upper elementary school. That went well. Even the Massacola elementary staff over there was out in force too. Emily and Michelle Romaine were there, and I think everything was handled. It went a lot better than I thought, because I showed up a little bit before 7 when the polls were going to open, and I thought there was going to be some sort of stacking, and there was no stacking. And all the staff were there in the parking lot already in the school. So I think we couldn't have asked for a better first time of anything. And obviously this is going to be taxed a little bit more when the volume increases, but I think as far as the first go of it, I think there's a tremendous effort by everybody, DPW included. So
There will be stacking in November.
I bet there will be, yes.
And also, I need to mention that you had police volunteers down at Bishop Field that was helping with the parking, which augmented the actual officer that was there. So that helped. And I also have to call out your staff, not only at the school. I believe the gentleman's name is Elliot, who was fabulous. And Mike showed up on the spot to pull out some miracles for some other things that worked, and they just, whatever we needed, they said, we can take care of that, we can do that, we'll take care of it, don't worry, it'll be done. And they were fabulous.
Andy?
Just thinking of the flow that you just described with the teachers from the Legion or from Bishop Field to go up, it got me to thinking, if things get really busy, I mean, obviously we're going into this sort of blind, not knowing what it's going to be like. Has there been any thought to using those as, if things get really full and traffic stacks up at the high school or the upper elementary or the middle school, to leverage those and maybe think about busing transportation to move people up?
Well, we certainly, motorist behavior being the way it is, and when people don't want to stand in line, they find, it's like water, it will find its own level and its own way to get out in any event. When they're going and they don't want to sit in traffic, if they're going to the middle school on Madeline Bennett or on Babusak Lake Road, believe you me, they're going to pull in there, they're going to park, and they'll probably walk it up to the school and do whatever they need to do to go and vote. Maybe it's just a wait and see if that does occur, to the extent that we think we need to maybe consider bringing in a small shuttle of some sort to get people up there and then get people back, and maybe coordinate between the site with 2 vans maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess the takeaway is nobody knows what it's going to be like. So I guess the post-mortem on this is going to be real interesting to see, because it's like putting it to the test of like the worst scenario you could, because it's going to be a lot of heavy voting, I'm sure, probably rivaling what we had 8 years ago, I would guess. So it'll be curious to see what options we need to look at going forward. Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board? So, trial run went well, the dress rehearsal, as we would call it. And we thank you for being so collaborative with us, and we look forward to hearing about November. It might not sound quite the same, but I know that we'll work as cohesively as possible to get you a good result. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And we're on to item number 4, which is the presentation of the proposed capital improvement plan for 2017 through 2023. That's with Matt and Marge.
Before you have, which was in your packet, the capital improvement plan, and then laid at your table this evening was the capital improvement plan with this statement of bonded debt. So it's everything on the CIP plus all the outstanding bond issues we have, the lease purchase agreements we have with Honeywell for the energy contract, and for the natural gas conversion, which is ending. This is the last payment for the natural gas conversion. You can see in the right-hand column of the long sheet. So this gives you the overall picture. But this is the document that we have been doing, and for, since I've been here and well beyond. It's called the Capital Improvement Plan. It's a 6-year plan, and the items have to be of a capital nature, and they have to be over $100,000. Those are per the RSAs, so it's per statute. That's the definition of what it is. And we go through a process where we first go in front of the Planning and Building Committee, which we did last Tuesday, and on the 12th, and that was approved by them. And then we come before you. You take your time and deliberate over it, and then from that point on, it goes in front of the Town of Merrimack Planning Board for their final disposition of this. This isn't necessarily a spending plan, but it is a capital improvement plan, as some items will be bonded that you see here, and others will just be in the budget or warrant articles, or however you want to go about raising and appropriating the money. In 2017-18, we start off with the ventilation system at Merrimack High School. That was in the operating budget last year, and because the operating budget did not pass and we went into default, we had to make a cut, and we cut that amount from the operating budget. This heats and takes care of the air exchange in the cafeteria, and it heats it takes care of the air exchange at the food service serving area, and it heats the cafeteria. This unit is a little bit over 40 years old. It's in disrepair. It's rusted. It is something that can fail, and if it does fail, we'd be without a system for around 2 to 3 months, because that's how long it would take to get something up and operational. This is something that we hope to do over the summertime, and it's something that is not going to be a direct replacement, but a new enhanced system. And the rough-in for that has already been done when we did the high school roof 2 years ago now. So that is the MHS ventilation system. On a side note, when we were talking to Tom Tussaud today, the unit's enclosure is rusting away. In fact, the rainstorm and the mild winds actually blew the door off of the entrance to it, and it just laid there on the roof because the hinges just rusted out. So we're doing a repair on it now. So this is something that we had in the budget that we're putting back in for 17-18, and we have it designated as urgent. Next you see the roofing plan that we have. That's laid out in both the bonded debt schedule and the CIP. We're looking at doing Thornton's Ferry School for 17-18. That would be the 97 additions plus the cafeteria area, and then it just goes on to 18-19 with Reed's Ferry for 507. Let me mention that Thornton's Ferry was $612,000 for this year, 17-18 proposed, and then Reed's Ferry at 507, and then 19-20 it would be the Upper L for 528, and 2021 would be Thornton's Ferry, which is the remainder of the school, and then we get into MES J Muse for 838, and then MES J Muse come back a second time for $617,000. So that's a continuing process. And if you look at your bonded debt schedule, at around 25-26, that's when we have a break of around 6 years where no roofs are being proposed. So that will give us an opportunity to either realize some savings or start a capital improvement reserve fund to have the capital reserve fund replenish, because right now there's only a few $1,000s in there. Next we have paving. This was here before you previously. This is the front of Merrimack High School. It is the loop that goes around the back where the buses are. And you also see O'Gara Drive. And then you see separated out the sidewalk that takes the existing sidewalk on O'Gara Drive and brings it out to Babusick Lake Road. So that would complete, as far as the town center committee is concerned, that loop going all the way around the high school. So that's there for 17-18. Other paving projects we have in the future for 18-19 and 19-20. 18-19 is the Thornton's Ferry Circle, which we've shown pictures of, that is really kind of cracking and filled with sealant and whatnot, and the lower lot, which is also cracking. And in 19-20, we have the MES entrance and the J. Muse parking lot. Those are in disrepair and have to be redone, resurfaced. And then we go down to 19-20, which is a drainage piece. While we're doing the lot at MES and J. Muse, we're going to put in the proper drainage for those areas and also take some of the load off of the roof drains that don't drain properly. The asbestos removal, we had that in the budget, but we did remove that, push that out. So it's here for 17-18 at $265,000. That'll complete all the known asbestos that we have in the district. If we do a renovation or something like that to one of the buildings and we have to go into a wall or break into a wall, we might find some asbestos pipe or something. But this is all the exposed asbestos that we have in our building that we currently know about right now. So that would take care of that. I believe we've been tackling this over perhaps a 10-year period, and it's nice to finally see the end of the rainbow here. The Consolidated Special Services SAU offices, we put it in 2018-2019. This would also include the removal and raising of the greenhouse and the blue house and putting them back to a spot where they could be paved for parking or another use, whatever that might be. This over here is the total cost of the project. This is something that obviously you probably want to look at bonding, so it's not the total fiscal impact to 2018. It's just the amount of capital that would be increased in the district by that point in time. And we put it in 2018-2019 because that's going to be the year where the tennis courts are going to be available to us down O'Gara Drive near Babusick Lake Road. That's when the agreement with the town of Merrimack is up, and they've made it clear that they're going to turn that land back to us. And Planning and Building Committee is studying the feasibility of whether or not the central office would fit in that location and if that would be an appropriate location for it. So that gives us another option. Then we go to upgrade of the bleachers. 1920 that starts with the bleachers by the track. You have the bleachers that were put in probably around 15 years ago, I would say, that are all ADA compliant, and they're really nice, and they're very very sturdy and well put together. Then you have these bleachers that have been there for a very long time. They still function, but they need to be brought up to code, and the only way that can be happen is to remove them and put in new bleachers that would match the current existing ones that we have with railings and ADA accessibility. And then we go into 1920, where we have 2021, I'm sorry, where we have in the upper elementary school the bleachers in the Smith Gym. They're the old big wooden ones that we had like in the high school, and that would be something that we would want to replace. The metal underpinnings to those are still functional and will still be fine. They're inspected every single year, sometimes mid-year, twice a year, and they're repaired as needed, but it's something that's going to have to be done in the future. Again, that's another situation where the new bleachers that are going to go in inside the building, much like the high school ones that we replaced, have rails and they're ADA accessible.
I'd just like to point out that those, by the time you replace those bleachers will have been in that building for 45 years.
It was good wood back then.
Yeah, good wood.
Yeah. certainly got our usage out of those. The next item we have, we had placed it out in 22-23. It's the artificial surface for the high school football field, soccer field, mainly the football field, as we know it. And the blue star and the arrow is we had it in 2023, and the Planning and Building Committee chose to bring that in because of a sense of urgency to get that done, to create a field that would be able to be utilized more fully, which is the truth. When you have an artificial surface, it's a field you can use it practically all day long into the evening, and you don't have to worry about any wear and tear. There is maintenance to be done, but you're not going to have bald spots where the grass just disappears over time because of use and because of wearing out a particular area. And lastly, we have the window replacements. Not lastly, but second to the last. We have window replacements at the high school on the eastern side of the building, and then on the inside of the building. Around 52 windows. We have first phase going in 1920, and then in 21-22 we have the second phase. When we built the high school addition back in 2001, the front of the building, we had those windows replaced, so that's the last time we had done a window replacement. So these are the windows that have the old aluminum framed kind of windows that you used to have at the front of the high school that are now kind of bronze, and they match in. 50 years? Okay, so they've been there 50 years. So the historian, Andy,
I was going to say, our board historian.
Great. And then we have an item that we've held in the operating budget, and we've had in the CIP for technology infrastructure upgrades, switches, core routers. We just replaced the core router this year for the whole network. It's an ongoing effort to keep everything up and operational. And we chose to end it in 22-23 because I think by that time it really is an ongoing expense, and everybody kind of realizes that it's going to be an ongoing expense, and it's really just going to be subsumed into the operating budget, and I don't feel we're going to be talking about it on the CIP item, which is kind of like, large items that happen infrequently with the exception of the roof program, but this is something that's just going to fold in the operating budget. So that's a brief overview of the CIP for you guys and for anybody listening at home to just kind of get the flavor of it all. So it's here for your consideration. We'll take any questions you may have.
Okay, so if I have Andy, then Cinda, and we'll see if it pops
So
up.
I just thought I'd add a little bit of color here because I was at the planning and building when we went through this. They wanted to move the field in from 22-23 in to 1920, largely because one of the things that Matt didn't mention is when the field was out in 22-23, it was about, $200,000 more? Because the cost increases. So what they wanted to try to do was show that if we did it earlier, it would cost you less money to do. So they chose this year. They claim if you moved it into next year, it would be like 1.4 million. That'd be 1.5, 1.6. It goes up like 100,000 a year, give or take, as you go through. So the planning and building wanted it there, although they understand that we as a board have had just checkered discussions on this in the past and haven't really broached the subject for probably about 3 years now, 2 to 3 years. So that was sort of their stake in the ground. There was no real hard we want it by yesterday. That was just their stance. A couple other comments. The paving on O'Gara Drive. We talked at the planning and building about paving O'Gara. I mean, we talked about it last year and we sort of punted it out, and then we lost the loop in the paving because of the reductions, because of the default budget. We believe, and I agree, that it's time to replace these, but also because it sort of ties into the work for the SAU SPED building. Now, one of the action items we've got is the engineering study of that site and the planning and building to come back about the feasibility of the place where the tennis court skate park is for to be able to see if the SAU sped building would work there. So by doing the paving, there'll be enough of an opening there to accommodate any work we were to do in that area because of the sidewalks and stuff. So the timing seemed right in order to do it. But one of the things that we'll have to discuss before the SAU sped building can truly be discussed is the dispensation of what's at the lot where that we have the lease to the town, because we've talked about the tennis courts at this table, but the other thing we haven't talked about is how the town is going to worry about the skate park. We haven't talked about whether we want to leave the skate park there after it's done. We haven't talked about giving the town time to move it. If the lease expires on June 30th, 2018, and this is an 18-19 budget item, we obviously can't start on that next day to be able to construct a building should we go through the process. So we're going to have to play with the logistics of the date when we can start preparation and things like that. So these are more stake in the ground sort of dates when it comes to those things. And again, we're looking for planning and building to report back to us on some of those, couple of those options that we talked about. So other than that, it was not a lot of discussion. People agreed that we needed to replace the ventilation. They said that we should have traded other things off to replace the heating and air conditioning, but water under the bridge. The other thing that we talked about, to be frank, is we picked up, because of the way the voting went, the question was raised by many voters about why everything was included in the operating budget and why you didn't bond or put a warrant article for any particular item. And the planning and building felt that of all the items in our budget for next year, the one that they would consider to bond, not to bond, excuse me, I'm saying that wrong, to put in a warrant article in their mind would be the paving projects, because they were the ones that could carve out into something separate of about $500,000, but also were not so critical to the infrastructure of the school that should they not pass, it would be of jeopardy, and it would show that the voters that were listening to sort of some of their concerns. So that was the takeaway in terms of a warrant article, if we were to consider that for next year's budget. So that's sort of the way the discussion went.
Cinda?
So when we just replaced the middle school roof, what was it? Was it 1.2 million? Refresh my memory. 1.3 million.
1.139,
Okay.
750.
But who's counting?
But who's counting?
So it's a very large building.
Yes.
Right? So what I was trying to reconcile in my mind is the two roofing items for Thornton's Ferry School, where they would equal like 1.8 million. And I was trying to figure out why it would be so much more expensive to do a roof for Thornton's Ferry School versus what we just put on the middle school. And
Well,
then-
there is, when you're adding them, there is an inflationary factor in there too, because the price of roofing depends upon the price of petroleum. So the further we go out, the higher the cost per square foot got. And that was through recommendation of our roofing consultant that we have hired and contracted with through Garland.
Okay.
So that's what it is. It's an unknown. If we go back to $100 a barrel, then this is going to go a little bit more than what you're looking at right now.
So is that one of the reasons that, I know when we did the middle school roof this year, we kind of got that extra area that was the petroleum cost because it's lower than it has been?
I will say
partly?
the other bids that came in were higher by at least $200,000 than what we received from this company, Teamcraft Roofing in Connecticut. So Teamcraft Roofing Connecticut, who gave us a very good price because they're a huge organization, they're nationwide, and they wanted to get into the state of New Hampshire, and they just liked the logistics of the project. So so the other bids were more than what we had budgeted for, basically, a little bit tight on that scheme. But the price of oil did have some effect, but it was the more effect was because of the company wanting to just do it all and to get their foot in the door. Now, are we guaranteed that same low price in the future from them? You know,
But we would put
who
it to bid
knows?
to them for, let's say,
Yeah,
the Thornton's
that's right.
Ferry and.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of reconcile that in my mind
Yep.
where, you know, it's like the 1.8 versus what we just spent, and that it almost equals the cost of the roofing for Thornton's Ferry almost equals the 1.9 for the Consolidated Special Services building, so I was just trying to,
Yeah, and plus, when you look at Thornton's Ferry, it's a whole different configuration. When the middle school was built, it's basically two sections. Big flat part going across the gym all the way, and then all of a sudden a drop down of around 8 feet, and that's the cafeteria. Cafeteria is a story and a half. So it's basically two sections. When I look at Thornton's Ferry, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different roofing sections that all have to be flashed out individually
Yeah.
because of the jigsaw puzzle way in which the school was constructed.
yeah,
That adds a lot of cost.
yeah, yeah. No, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. I have a question in regards to the asbestos removal. In the past, there were grants available nationally. I'm not sure about New Hampshire. Is that something that's been reviewed or ever been looked at?
There are no grants
In New Hampshire.
available. There were grants back in the 80s, I want to say.
As soon as latest as like 2014.
No, there's nothing there for asbestos removal in the schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just another aspect, based off of communications from individuals on the last election, was just giving more information. I know that there was a lot of good pictures and everything regarding the roofing. I was wondering if we could start to maybe look at how we might be able to put together information to get in front of the voters earlier, or as soon as possible at some of these things, just to help educate the constituents and get a spot that they can go to on all of them.
Marge?
I would say probably what we would do is we are going to get this, hopefully with your approval, and go before the planning board. As soon as we have what it is you want to do and go before the planning board, we will do a photo presentation that night, and we would just take the entire presentation and
Put it
put that
online.
forward.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd also
Show the rusty door, too.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
I'd also probably, any changes like that, we have a Twitter account, and it's been picked up and followed by a lot of people, and a lot of people retweet it. So I just do a little announcement once that would be done, and it would go out, and so people would get some visibility
you.
on it.
I had a couple comments based on the feedback that Andy gave. The first thing was about the SAU SPED office being in 1819. The town council is ready for our answers about what our goals are and what our thoughts are, in the anticipation that they would be off the property and would be returned to us in working condition on the first day of the fiscal year 1819. So I have no concerns that if the skate park is not appropriate to stay where it is, that they would have ample, we as a board would provide ample notification so that they can make arrangements to take it down and relocate it where they see fit on town property. So I'm not concerned about that at all. They've been asking, when we're ready for a while now to talk about our goals and our plans. So based on what we as a board decide with a formal and appropriate vote, then I think I think we need to bring that up sooner than later. Once all the budgets are done, then we can now engage the town council.
I would just tell you that Rich Hendricks, the chairman of the Planning and Building Committee, wants to come before you in November to talk. I believe that's a point where there are some parts of the charge, and he has to come then. So maybe that would be a month to be able to talk.
Sounds great. So as far as if we decide that if we're ready to build, we'll be ready to build July 1st of 18, as long as all goes as expected. And I know they're talking about warrant articles for paving, but paving is still infrastructure. And again, it's one of those highly utilized assets, even though it's not something that we look forward to. But the more you let it depreciate, just like our tennis courts, the more expensive it is to bring it back to workable conditions. So I always worry that, you're putting a transaction in the hands of a voter who's looking at today's tax bill, and we have to look at if it degrades beyond what we could do to fix it, and we have to completely replace it, then we would have a higher expense to us. So that's where I question the paving and warrant articles. I'm not saying no, but my position is I think we really need to vet the consequences of those actions. And of course, we're at a very high level right now. And then where I do see a warrant article appropriate is turf. So that's something where our football teams, our different teams can use the field now. It's not as usable, but it still has its manageable function. So that's something where we would still be able to carry on all the things we've been able to carry on. But putting that in the hands of the voters, because it's a $1.6 million upfront investment that's going to be brought back to the voters on average every 15 years. That's a change once you go that direction. That I think would be a great question for our voters, whether to go from natural to artificial turf. So those are my kind of notes on that. And a closing thing, and I'll go down to you, Michael, and Andy, I think you had your hand up as well. But this is something I want you guys to look at when you're looking at our capital improvement plan, and that is the impact. And Matt puts this together, and it's one of my favorite documents ever, because what it does is it takes the bonded debt that we have for the different projects that are already done and being paid for, including the ones we're bringing on, some having an operational expense, so you only see one line item, and one that would show multiple year expense, like the SAU and SPED office, which you'll see, I think it's a 10-year block of payments. So you'll see what it does for bonded and capital improvements over that period, and you can really look at the impact to the tax rate. That kind of puts 2 and 2 together on top of what we do for everyday operations. So something to study as we're preparing for budgets. So that was my 2 cents, but I will go, I think actually it's Andy and then Michael, because I think you had your hand up responding to me, but.
I just wanted clarification because I know that it's been stated a few times in regards to the turf. What sports would actually use the field if it went to a turf field?
Well, it would definitely be football. The band would use it to practice on, because right now they practice in the parking lot between the cars, and it would help out with their formation, so that would be something they would do. I think soccer would definitely be there, lacrosse,
Cross field hockey.
field hockey.
Any place that needs a relatively rectangular could easily use it.
Absolutely.
And then you've got different organizations, like, soccer, you could have, soccer for the different schools, and then the MYA and other parts of the town. So anything was square.
And I just want bring that up because I wanted to be clear that I think that investment's for a much greater part of the community than just football. And, I think it would be also beneficial to call on all those sports to bring them together and see what other options there might be to actually fund some of that field too. So,
And that's actually one of the charges of the Planning and Building Committee, to figure that out. So
I just want to put that out there because a lot of people just think football, but I think everybody needs to understand the full scope. Thank you.
Mine was just regarding the turf. I don't know if that's, okay. When this came up, it was about 2 years ago, when there was a lot of discussions around the track and the turf, and there was a lot of outreach from people in the community. At the same time, it just happened to time with sometimes certain things just hit the news or become a hot button, of the time. And at that particular time, there was a lot of conversation about potential, environmental impacts of turf and the cancer and some things like that. So I think it's a good discussion. I think there was a higher incident of players that were goaltenders, and a bunch of things. I think that was probably one thing that we would want to look at.
You've yielded the whole time.
yeah, no, that's fine. That's cool. It's, so where was I going to go with this? Oh, yeah. So to get to the point about, Shannon, that you raised about what we put on a warrant, I've been in budget committee and school board for 10 years now and dealing with these. And the philosophy has been all that time to put anything infrastructure-based in the operating budget because we can't risk it not being done. Well, I think for also the first time in this period of time, the operating budget failed this year. And in large part, the feedback from voters who are not shy about finding me in places is that they felt that we gave them no options and that we were shoving things at them in one big, non-digestible flow mechanism, right? So what I took away from that was not that they wouldn't have approved it, but that with the granularity of what it is that we're doing, that they would be more apt to accept what we're doing. Now, the example that was given is in Bedford, there was a sidewalk bonded article, or paved, warrant article. I keep wanting to say bonded, it's not bonded. Warrant article to build a sidewalk around some of their schools that passed fairly easily in terms if you look at the voting results. So when we talked at the Planning and Building, the discussion of taking something and making it a warrant article to give voters a bit of a granularity choice and to be able to very clearly say air conditioner, roof, asbestos replacement and technology are things that we have to do. It would be better infrastructure. A road, on the other hand, could be debatable whether could you live with it, without it, could you patch it? So this way, at least let the voters have a voice in one thing, and then it sets the precedent for other things in the futures that are like the turf field, like some of the other paving projects and things like that. So that was the thought process that we went through. So it'll be part of our discussion as we go through in terms of how we pay for or want to present these to the voters. But that was sort of the logic behind it.
Any other questions so far? I actually have one I skipped over, which was, Matt, in 1718, under paving and sidewalk, you do have it broken out where it puts sidewalk on O'Gara Drive at $88,580, and you were saying per RSA it's got to be above $100,000 to be on the CIP. So is that going to be considered an integrated project of paving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just broke it out so you could see the price of the sidewalk.
Okay. Excellent. And on that, are we going to be doing a study? I know that when we were talking about cuts, Jacob was still here, and the school loop was something that he had a lot of passion about regarding, its need for repair, and we completely agree with him, by the way. But with that school loop in O'Gara, is there a study about increasing its parking capacity? I know people park along the road, or formalizing it, just kind of better defining the flow of it, or is it just going to be done in one big project?
No, the flow is the flow. I mean, that's fairly well established, so, and it works fairly well. The paving would just be reclaiming and redoing the existing and not touching any of the parking lots or anything like that. The only thing you could do with the parking lots, if you wanted to, is looking at reconfiguring the striping the way it's done to see if you could fit more parking spaces in there. But as far as parking goes, there seems to be a fairly decent amount of parking, so everybody has a spot, including students.
Right. I mean, like the informal parking that seems to happen along O'Gara.
There's not that. This year, I've been looking around. There doesn't seem that much informal parking going on.
Yep.
Well, why don't we have the young man over there
the driver.
speak to that?
We'll have
Yes,
the driver
please.
weigh in.
Yeah, so generally during the beginning of the school year, it's not too crowded because sophomores start getting their licenses towards the middle and end of the year, and then it becomes actually very crowded. So after about mid-year, all the parking passes have been giving out, and so students aren't allowed to park in the first 3 lots or the senior lot, and so they park in the dirt lot. But then really you start getting to the point where it starts getting unsafe because the dirt lot becomes full, and so people start parking out by the tennis courts and having to walk, that whole distance to the school, and it starts becoming unsafe. And so there's definitely a lack of parking spots. However, I don't think it's necessary to put that many more in, because I feel that, I don't know if sophomores really need those parking spots to actually come to school, or I think it's possible for them to carpool with other people. So there definitely is a safety problem, I think, especially during the winter, when there's limited access to the available parking spots, and as more people keep getting their licenses. But I don't think it's necessary to put too many more parking spots in necessarily. I think carpooling is always an option.
Well, we did have a plan years ago, and I still have it on my computer, done by VHB in Bedford, to put 2 parking lots, adding an additional, I want to say 60 parking spaces across from the lot behind Mastercola Elementary School. I remember that significantly. There were 2 parking lots under that area that could be done, but that's not on the radar as far as this goes.
Right. And I think the point was, and even dating to my planning and building days, which is, the earlier 2000s, that, we do have an environment that can create that informal parking. And I saw pictures of cars parked between 2 trees up the up the slope and stuff like that during extreme periods. So when I talk about reconfiguring, I don't mean adding spaces, I mean defining it so it doesn't become, informal parking doesn't become so accessible and create that unsafe environment where they are cutting into buses.
I was going to say that. So the sidewalk is a double-edged sword because it'll help the safety issue for people walking from the tennis courts, but it'll also block off that informal parking right across from the.
Oh, it depends how tall we make the granite curb cut in there. So.
So I'm just thinking, if it's decided that the SAU building should be where the tennis courts are, and if in fact we're going to get rid of the greenhouse and blue house, which would become parking area, it might be good to do that whole configuration about parking from the high school, considering the elimination of both houses, all the way down, and then what would happen on either side of the SAU building. So that's one whole configuration, if you will. This really is about the paving. And if you just drive around the loop, if you haven't driven around the bus loop recently, I think you can see the potholes and so on. So it's really about that and the continuation down O'Gara. And I would hate for it to be halted because someone has a different idea about parking spots. You know, this really is a true paving project, and I think it's better to do it when we're just talking to the voters about the elimination of the green and the blue house and then how that all plays out. We just do it all at one time.
Fair enough. Michael?
Just add one thing. Do we have a line item for patching of the road right now and how much that costs on a yearly basis?
In the operating budget, I don't want to give you a number off the top of my head. It's way less than six figures. There is a minor patching budget if something happens, maintenance. It's minimal.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions on our capital improvements for the next 6 years? Andy?
Are we going to take a vote whether we approve it as it is or take motions to change it?
Okay. Yes, we are, but not tonight, dear. No, what we'll do is we always have
Well,
a
come on, let's
formal
roll.
presentation. It gives us a couple weeks to review it, get some feedback, get some input, and then at our next meeting, this will be at our desks again, and that's when our workshop will come to fruition. So based on what we've heard tonight, gives us time to formulate any questions because this is some big ticket stuff. We want to kind of chew on it for a while, and at our next meeting, we'll come back and any adjustments we feel are appropriate based on the goals the board has, then we will endeavor that in a couple of weeks. Does that make sense for everybody else? So if there are any questions, just forward them to Marge and Matt. If you could copy me as a courtesy, that would be great. So we make sure that if there's any answers coming back, that they can be shared amongst and appreciated. So based on that, I think we are good with the CIP for tonight. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is update on the District Communications Committee with Mark.
Thank you. So I'm happy to tell you that we've made some progress in the getting the committee together. Nancy Rose, who's going to be chair of the committee, has had to be away from the district for a while, attending to some family business. So in her place, I've made contact with folks, and I'm pleased to tell you that we have 6 teachers representing each of our buildings. They're Holly LaBelzik, a grade 1 teacher from Mastrocola Elementary School, Lindsay Townsend, grade 2 teacher from Reeds Ferry School, Katie Barnfield, a special educator from Thorntons Ferry, Kathy Goodman, a 5th grade teacher from the Upper Elementary School, Sue Heimberg, a tech educator from the middle school, and Joe Sanborn, a science educator from the high school. And in addition, we asked the building administration if they might recommend some parents who might be able and willing to serve on the committee as well. And we're lucky in this district. We have so many people who are qualified to do it. And we have 4 confirmed folks at this point. Andrea Andrus with 2 children from Reeds Ferry School, Christine Koss with 2 children from Thorntons Ferry School, Nikki Thompson with 2 students recommended by the Upper Elementary School, and Meg Vaccaro, a parent of 1 student at the high school. And we have in process parents from MES and the middle school, and we'll have those filled, I'm sure, within a matter of days. Nancy's returned now, and so we'll be pulling together our first meeting, no doubt, before our next board meeting, and so we'll be able to provide you with information about the scope and goals of that first meeting when we get together in October.
Excellent. We are still accepting community at large applications as well, so anyone that's interested in, from the community that would like to submit an application, please just send a letter of intention or interest to me at my school board email address, which is shannon.barnes@sau26.org. Are there any questions of the Communications Committee? Michael?
Thank you, Shannon. So I just had a question. I know that we went through and gave a charge to the planning and building for items, stuff like that. Is there going to be a charge for the Communications Committee from the board, or is that necessary? What's the procedure for something like that?
I think the Communications Committee, as we designed it, is going to be an ongoing committee like we have with a number of our school board rep assignments. So this isn't something like a charge for our planning and building committee has a beginning, middle, and end and deadlines. I think this is going to be an ongoing established committee, so we're always available to collaborate and be able to respond to the need for communication on different levels and introduce avenues to engage our constituents. Marge?
I would just add to that, I think when Nancy came before you and had a conversation, she was looking at more in terms of short-term goals and long-term goals. So the short term was to really try to operationalize to the fullest extent Power School and to try and engage parents, students, and faculty in better communication. So I think when the core group comes together, they're going to look at what might be done in the short term, and once that's put together, to come back and share that with you, so that if there was something that hadn't been looked at, that it could be looked at. But we really wanted to try and see if we couldn't make something happen this first semester, which means we have between now and January. Then the longer term goal is to really look at how we publicize what's going on in the Merrimack School District community. So this committee is going to look at that, all the possibilities of that, and have an ongoing dialogue with you. So rather than not see the chair and its members, and there will be 2 board members that will be accessing this. So you could also do it off a committee report. You could say, we want to come back and ask fellow board members something. So it's going to be, to the point Shannon makes, I think, much more an ongoing kind of thing and done really as a committee report, I feel. But Nancy's intent is to come back after the short-term goals are put together and share that with you to see if, in fact, they're on the mark.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So if there are no other questions about communications, we will work on communicating. So that will be coming up very soon. So we're on to item number 6, which is the second review of new board policy with Marge.
Thank you. So I wanted to highlight 3 modifications made. The first was looking at the attendance of the student school board member rep, because the way it was written, it kind of implied the student was expected to attend all the time, and it could have included the summer. So based on what the board offered up, I changed the wording to say student members are expected to attend as many school board meetings as possible between September and June. So clearly the school year is defined, and also just in talking with Zev, I realize, and you realize, that there are times of the year when exams are going on, high holy days, whatever. And so that gives a little bit of wiggle room to say that there would be some for which the student rep could just be excused. If you look down, you'll see under legal references, an important word had been left out. The actual RSA 19423-F has the word school inserted in it, so it would be high school student as a school board member. So that had just been oversighted. The other question that was raised up was about the student representative, perhaps representing all the students in the school system, or what about other representatives? So to make sure that query was handled, I dealt with the attorney for the School Boards Association, Barrett Christina. And the reason he was important to talk to is when these statutes get put in place, there is an intent to all of them. How did it come to be? So I wanted to ask him about that. And he pointed out that if you actually look at the statute itself, it's very specific about it being for the high school. So it literally says, high school student as school board member. The provisions of this section shall apply only to high schools located in a school district in which the school board has voted to have a non-voting student member. And then when you look further in the statute, it says that the high school student rep will represent all public high school students within the district. So it's very clearly delineated that it is for high school representation. And I think that's kind of what Zev was alluding to before. In other words, if he is to be a rep, he resides within the high school, so it's easier for him to find out what the high school is thinking and bring that to the board, likewise, to take it back to the students. So I hope that query was answered by talking to Barrett. And I believe that's all I captured by what the board had raised up. So I would just ask, is there anything that I missed from last time?
I'm seeing none, or am I seeing some? Okay, sure.
I guess I understand the intent. I guess I disagree with it. So I'm going to actually vote no for this, just as a statement, I guess, in a way, because I feel that we want an opportunity for other students, if they see the individual, the board member that's representing the students, to understand that they can come forward and talk to them. I think they can, but I guess I mean,
Okay. Well, this kind
because
of
we made changes to the number one, right? In the RSA, it clearly states it one way, but we made changes. Is that correct? So why couldn't we make changes to number 2?
Right. The wording was changed to simply state in the school year, September to June. I
Well,
think
we
this-
added also as many as a, so the RSA, we're changing the RSA there, so I'm not sure why it can't flow down, but that's just my statement, I guess. Thank you.
Andy?
So if I remember back to the Leave It to Beaver days, because I'm old enough to have watched it when it was live on TV or recorded. The whole concept of somebody serving on a board that was a student was a follow-on to the student council concept from the high school. So it wasn't really as student to represent all the students in the district as much as it was to give the high school student government, which is more close to voting age, things like that, more of an involvement and more of an exposure to what goes on to run the district. So while I understand what Michael's saying about representing the district, I think the intent of the school board rep from the beginning was to bring the student government concept into the board that runs the school. They're not a voting member, so they can't change. We get their input into it, and sometimes they can take information back, but it's not as though they're a member voting to be able to represent that. So for me, I think it's appropriate the changes to make sure we do it only September and June, because we in this district know that they don't come during the summer necessarily, because they could have graduated and there could be a gap. So to me that makes sense, but I still think it makes sense the way that it is for the roots of how it was started. So
I would tend to agree with Andy's position on this, but I just want to make sure I have an appropriate point of order as we build our next agenda, and this will be on it. If your intention, normally when we approve a policy, we do it in consent, and consent has a number of different items, so you can't just cherry pick what you don't consent to. So would it be, based on how you feel right now, would you prefer it to be its own line item, so anything that would have been like new teacher hires, things like that, that would be normally in consent, would you rather it be taken out so it could be voted on individually, so you're not dissenting from any other consent items?
I appreciate the clarification. Yes, I would, please.
Okay. So we'll put it as an individual agenda item for next. And does the rest of the board feel we're ready to vote on it in our next meeting? Okay, then, if not, we use it as a workshop item. Go ahead.
I totally understand where the philosophy of this is coming from and everything like that. I guess just because it's the way it came doesn't mean I have to agree with it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So
Totally, but I just didn't want it to, I wanted to segregate it out so that way anything else that comes up that
and
you feel
I
strongly
appreciate
about,
that.
you're
Yeah,
not
thank you.
saying no
You
to.
sound like my son that questions the origins of everything that we do.
So, no problem. So what we'll do is we'll make it a separate agenda item with the intent of the board to vote on it at our next meeting. Excellent, thank you. We are on to number 7, which is the request for New Hampshire School Boards Association resolutions. This is an annual function of our role. This comes every year. Since my first year on the board, I've been the school board rep. I no longer am because I'm an executive to the NHSBA, so we will have a school board rep representing Merrimack up there in January. But that being said, the resolutions, we have 2 types. We have the petition resolutions and continuing resolutions. School boards have the opportunity to petition the NHSBA to vote on resolutions that they feel will provide benefit to the state of New Hampshire's students. So, usually it comes around things like local control. It's coming to things like No Child Left Behind. The things that are impacting students across the state of New Hampshire are presented and voted on. It's a 3-step process, but the first process is if the school boards feel that there's an issue that they want addressed as a resolution so that it's part of the New Hampshire School Boards Association platform, then they would apply to they would submit a resolution for consideration by the delegate assembly. In the process of that, there will be review by the executive board and the board of directors, on which I both sit. And with that comes usually a review by the attorneys. Actually, the executive and assistant executive directors are both attorneys. So they will come up with language, sometimes that's alternate, which you'll also see in another exercise we'll be doing in a few weeks, that will go over the language that will make it more legally viable, because they are resident experts in education law. So where they may offer some tweaks, or they may say that this is something that won't benefit education for that reason. They may actually outright say that they would not recommend supporting it. So those things being said, if there's something coming up, if you have questions on what you might want to talk about, you can come to me. I'm obviously very involved. But if we wanted to put together any type of resolution, in my 6 years on the board, this is my 7th now, we have yet to do so. But other boards have for reasons that they felt strongly about. So if that comes to fruition that you want to do that, let me know. And we will put it on our agenda for the 3rd of October. Are there any questions so far? Excellent. So you have in your packets the call for resolutions that gives you what we've done, and we'll give you kind of a nice overview of what it's all about. So thank you on that. So I think we're up to some housekeeping, which is item number 8, the approval of the September 6th, 2016 minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Made by Cinda, a second by Andy. Are there any edits to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll put the minutes to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. And now we are on to number 9, which is acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000 with Matt.
Thank you. This evening, we have before you from the parent-teacher group at Thornton's Ferry School to Thornton's Ferry Elementary School the amount of $1,015.09. It's from the PTTF for the purchase of music equipment, software, and technologies. We thank them for their generosity, and I present that before you tonight for your consideration.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have a motion to accept? Andy?
I move that we accept this gift from the PTTF at Thorntons Ferry School with our sincere thanks.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Naomi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 500. Item number 10, we are on to other. A, correspondence. Is there a correspondence to come before the board? I have Cinda and Michael. Cinda, if you'd like to go first.
I just received an email from a parent regarding the situation that happened at Reed's Ferry with the lockdown.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
I also had communication from a parent in regards to the situation at Reed's Ferry regarding the lockdown.
Thank you. Any other correspondence? Seeing none, we're on to item 10B, which is comments. Are there any comments from the board? Seeing none, we're on to item number 11, new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, we're on to committee reports, number 12. Are there any committee reports from the board? Wow. You do. You were planning a building
No.
for crying out loud.
Yes. All I could think was the fact that I missed Ceres because of a aborted business trip. But I did miss the Ceres Board of Directors meeting. However, I did go to planning and building, and we've heard the debrief on that completely. So,
Excellent.
except they did choose to vote on the CIP that meeting, so that's why I was confused
Oh,
tonight. I thought we were just going to roll right into it. So,
no, and I think we have two board members who have never done one before, so I just definitely give them the opportunity to digest it and have the time to ask questions. So, I mean, we're old hat; we've done this forever. But so, are there any other committee reports from the board? Seeing none, we are on to number 13, public comments. We are losing public by the minute. So, are there any public comments to come before the board? Seeing none, we're on to 14, the manifest. We will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Cinda and seconded by Michael. I think I saw a pen up there. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And we are adjourned. Thank you and good night.